Remember in my Jak 3 review from over 2.5 years ago when I said my next video would be of Jak X Combat Racing? Well, it's safe to say that didn't happen, and I left that video on a break on par with the Uncharted 3 review. I'm not completely sure why I left it on such a long hiatus, but it might have been because I was burned out from playing and reviewing 3 other Jak and Daxter games in such quick succession. Another reason could be that I don't spend much time in racing games, at least not their story modes, and reviewing that genre is uncharted territory for me. Even so, I can happily report that I've finished the game at last, and the review along with it. So, how is Jak X as a racing game, as well as a J&D spin-off? Strap yourselves in for this crazy ride.
I meant the car. It's a beaut! Free-floating V-chassis, 326 superheaders, channel lock universal weapons cage. Very nice.
Jak X Combat Racing was like the prior J&Ds made by Naughty Dog for the PlayStation 2, and it released on October 18th of 2005. This game differs heavily from the other J&D games, as it's a racer and not a platformer, so it wasn't received as well as the J&D trilogy of games, but it still got decent feedback. I played and recorded the PlayStation 4 version, so keep that in mind whenever you notice massive framerate drops.
But even in death, I will field the greatest racing team ever assembled and win the biggest race on the planet.
The story has Jak, Daxter, Kira, Ashlyn, and Torn in Crash City for a meeting with Crew's daughter Rain, who serves them a drink and relays a message that Crew apparently recorded before his demise. In the message, he explains that he had always wished to win the Crash City Grand Championship and that Jak and the gang will win it for him. Why would they do that? Because Crew has added poison to their drinks, and they won't get the antidote unless they win the competition, so they form a racing team to do just that.
That's Studio Debating 101, baby. Oh yeah, you just got schooled.
Birds do not school. They flock. So flock off!
I wouldn't say the story was as intriguing as it was in Jak 2 or 3, but for a racing game, it was pretty good. The setup was solid and gave a good reason for having Jak and the others participate in the first place. It also made the dynamic between them and the commentator GT Blitz fascinating, as their in-it-to-win-it attitude disrupted Blitz's manipulation of the competition. Something else I liked quite a bit was the pace of the story with how the scenes were sprinkled in. You have to do some challenges for a new cutscene to play, but it usually doesn't matter what order you complete them in, so that made for some much appreciated player agency. The scenes themselves were nice and had that J&D charm to them, specifically from Jak 2 and 3, with edginess pervading the dialogue. There's constant swearing, not without bleeps of course, but there's definitely more of that this time around. There's also a lot of sexual tension coming from Kira and Ashlyn, the former of which trying to seduce Jak, and the latter describing challenges with utmost innuendo.
Alert! I like my races like I like my men. I start from the bottom and work up.
Naughty Dog actually got the pairings right this time, as Jak finally got together with Kira, and it seems Torn and Ashlyn is a thing again. It is a weird transition from Jak and Ashlyn in Jak 3, but that's mostly Jak 3's fault for setting that shit up in the first place. The edginess fits J&D, at least post-Precursor Legacy, but I did think it was a bit too on the nose this time. The game still had a lot of fun dialogue though, so it's no biggie. The new characters were fine, with Racer, GT Blitz, and Rain standing out. Racer was pretty much just a generic antagonist, but he got the job done, and his German accent made it fun to listen to him.
Alert!
GT Blitz was an entertaining commentator who just loves to screw people over for ratings, and he had a deeper motive behind the scenes, making him more compelling. On that topic, the twists in the story were done quite well, and had the proper amount of foreshadowing to work. It did become obvious that GT Blitz was the mysterious Miso, but better that than having the reveal come out of nowhere. Rain's twist was also handled well, and I got bamboozled by her so hard. She did seem suspicious at first, but she sounded genuine about not knowing Crew's ploy, but she did, so good on you game for tricking me like that. It made her more memorable than she would have been otherwise, even though the very fact that Crew had a daughter alone would have made her unforgettable. The returning characters were fun to revisit, even though they weren't necessarily at their peaks. Maybe aside from Crew, who's just as fun and dickish even in his dead state. The opening cutscene also showed off Jak and Daxter perfectly, with Jak quietly driving like a badass, and Daxter foolishly talking big to some shady guys. The scene where Jak left Miso for dead was also cool. Good on them for not trying to gloss over Jak's murderous nature. They kinda did that with Nate in Uncharted 2. Many other fan favorites also got the limelight, first Kira, Ashlyn, and Torn, then later Pecker, Sig, and Cleaver. While it was convenient for some of these characters to return, it was a nice way to pay tribute to the franchise, which you'd expect a spin-off like this to do. Something I am iffy on, however, is new racers just jumping into the competition without having to do anything prior to earn their positions. Like, Jack has to win gold on every qualifier and get 50 out of 60 possible points in each cup. Yet Sig and Cleaver can just enter the competition whenever, and everyone else can screw up as many times as they like and still make it to finals. Don't even get me started on Kira, who literally didn't join until the final, yet I had to work my way up for hours. Another thing I found weird is that the members of Jack's team all encourage each other before the challenges, but then have no second thoughts about annihilating each other during those challenges. Friends in the meets, freaks in the streets, I guess. I suppose debating inconsistencies in a story like this serves as a moot point, but I still found it worth mentioning, as it made the plot nonsensical at times.
I'm getting rocked over here!
The gameplay of Jak X obviously differs a lot from the others, as it is 100% a racing game. Sure, previous installments had racing too, but that wasn't their main focus, and it showed. Unlike those games, Jak X actually has really good driving controls. Thankfully so, as it would have been a terrible game otherwise. It does vary how good the controls are depending on the car, and there are some tracks that make steering super difficult, but it's fine for the most part. While the gameplay is fairly simple, there are some strategies to keep in mind, like using the different eco powers that are all beneficial in some way. Blue eco grants boosts, making the cars go way faster than normally, and there are far more ways than just pickups to earn them. You can also get a boost from stepping on the gas at the last second before the start of a race, blue ramps on certain stages, power cells in a specific challenge type, and also from power slides and tank times. Drifting is pretty much essential for performing well, especially since most tracks have lots of tight corners. Jak X Combat Racing, as its name implies, isn't only about racing, but combat too, and destroying our opponents can be just as crucial as getting around maps fast. Yellow and red eco provide weapons, yellow eco being used in the front, with machine guns, grenades and missiles, whereas red eco deals with opponents from behind, with proximity bombs, turrets and oil spillage. Red eco pickups can also be used as defense, as they can block out certain yellow eco attacks, or all of them if you get a shield. These make up a dynamic combat system that rarely feels unfair. That is until someone sends out a Peacemaker Blast, which is this game's equivalent to the blue shell from Mario Kart, as it targets whoever's in number 1, but the unique thing about it is that you can slow down to a worse position so that it will change its target. Destroying enemies builds up a dark eco bar, and once it's full, the weapons you get become stronger, which is a nice touch. The bar will reset if you're destroyed though, but green eco may prevent that. These are usually far and few in between, so best to snatch them up if you've even taken a few hits. Even if you haven't, and you don't have a use for other eco powers either, it can still be smart to pick them up, so that racers behind you won't get to reap their benefits. So while the gameplay is fairly simplistic, there's still a lot of thought and consideration to be had. The game has a variety of challenge types that are all fun in some way. There's obviously the generic circuit race and races against time, but the time challenges in particular are made interesting with these collectible tokens that stop time temporarily. It's made even more captivating by having to complete 2 laps, so that you can collect the tokens you missed in the first lap. Perhaps my favorite challenges were the ones where you rack up points by crashing into oncoming traffic that spawn out of thin air. Those felt super satisfying. They do suck if the car you use isn't sturdy enough to keep a consistent direction, but it's no problem for bulkier vehicles. There are 2 prevalent types of death races, one where you destroy other competitors in a free-for-all, and another where you destroy generic car clones that spawn out of nowhere. My problem with the latter is that the weapons variety feels small, as it only gives you 3 options. What's even more disappointing is that one of them is a machine gun, and you have one with unlimited ammo to begin with, so getting another that has limited ammunition feels like a waste of space. That is unless you get the upgraded version, but the machine gun you already have should have just gotten that treatment. Moving on, there are also artifact races that have similar design to arena death matches, but the goal here is to collect the most artifacts. These were mostly fun, except for in the snow map near the end, which had such a confusing layout, and traversing it felt like driving through the dreaded desert from Jak 3. The power cell races were really fun, as they were the fastest of the bunch, and did involve a bit of strategy, like conserving mines for protection, and boosting as much as possible without crashing. Lastly, there were a few challenges I thought were underutilized, the first of which involving killing the most animals or machines. Those were fun, and I wish there were more of them, especially considering how many of those other death races there were. The capture the power cell type of challenge didn't appear very frequently either, and there should have been more of them to break the monotony of replaying the other challenge types over and over again. A challenge I found very interesting was the one at the start of the last cup, in which your weapons wouldn't work. While it was annoying since you could neither destroy others nor defend yourself, it was a cool concept, and I found it odd that it never happened again. I expected a later challenge would disable your boost function, but I suppose that would have been too unfair.
Oh, his eggs got cracked on that one. Ooh, he got his feathers plucked.
As expected from the graphical wizards at Naughty Dog, the game looks great, featuring stylish cars, glowing power-ups, harsh yet beautiful environments, not to mention fiery explosions. This game has such a badass atmosphere and I love it. It really takes me back to the explosive PS2 era. Every time your car blows up, the destruction is highlighted in slow motion, which was a neat touch, but I'll admit that I got tired of the effect, as it happens so often. It's even worse when it happens to cars that you kill, since that instantly puts you out of it, making it jarring to return to the action, but at least those are rarely ever highlighted. I otherwise love the chaos of it all, it's very exhilarating. The character models are clean as ever, maybe except for Jack, his bugs me a little. It's probably the short and slightly spiky hair, it honestly reminds me of The Lost Frontier, which surely can't be a good thing. What really sells the presentation is the bombastic soundtrack, as it makes everything so epic. It heavily reminds me of the PS2 Ratchet & Clank soundtracks, particularly Deadlocked, which is fitting since both Jak X and Ratchet Deadlocked are unique fourth installments in their respective franchises. The soundtrack thus makes me feel like I'm right at home, truly immersing me into the carnage. The tracks are quite distinctive too, so it's not like they all just blend into one another, which is great. It's for sure my favorite OST in the series for these reasons, not like I was the biggest fan of the prior ones anyway. That's not to dunk on them, they were still well designed, I just didn't quite gel with them. The biggest downside to this game is that the framerate is absolute garbage. I think it has to do with me playing and recording a PS4 port instead of the original PS2 version, but it's still pretty crazy how much it drops. Other than to save space on my timid Mac, that's the reason I only recorded the game at 30 frames per second. Before concluding this section, I want to mention that this game packs a lot of cool unlockables, not just in regards to cars. There's fun behind the scenes stuff, accessories that make dope references, and if you have the right games, you can even unlock secret characters. I don't have Jak 2 or 3 on PS4, so I unfortunately couldn't get those skins, but I did get Jak from the first game, and better yet, Ratchet from Deadlocked. How cool is that? Also, Clank's head is used for one of the antennas, completing the duo. So, to answer the questions I brought up in the intro, Jak X does a great job at being a racing game and a Jak and Daxter spin-off. It doesn't have the usual gameplay that J&D is known for, but it made huge improvements in the racing department, which it obviously had to. I love the sheer chaos of it all, elevated by impressive visuals and an absolute banger soundtrack. The writing is really good too, definitely not the best the series has to offer, but stays true to it and offers some welcome additions. As for flaws, most challenge types were overused, making them repetitive, while also leaving certain challenges underutilized. The destruction sometimes distracts from the immersion, and so do the contradictions between what's happening in the gameplay and the story. The framerate is also awful, but I think that's more of an issue with the port rather than the game itself. I'm giving Jak X Combat Racing the rating of 8 out of 10. Wait, what? I'm giving it a higher score than 1 and 3? Well, I'd probably up the ratings for them to about an 8 as well nowadays, but I can't deny that Jak X does a great job at what it aims to do. It's no Jak 4, but it's a fun chaotic racer that still manages to feel like Jak and Daxter. And thus, my Jak and Daxter review series has come to an end. I know there are 2 other games, but they're considered spin-offs and weren't made by Naughty Dog. Besides, they were designed for the PSP, which is a system I don't own and have no interest in getting. Even though I don't care to check them all out, I do really like the Jak and Daxter franchise, and I've grown to appreciate the games more over time. These reviews have helped with that, and I've come to realize I've judged them a bit too harshly before. I still don't consider any of them masterpieces, but they're all great games, and I'm happy to have played and reviewed them. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully, you'll see me next time!